We divorced not because of betrayal, not because love died, but because she found her wings. She soared to new heights while I stayed grounded, looking up at her with eyes full of admiration, yet also a profound sense of loss. It was an unnamed tragedy where love wasn't strong enough to keep two hearts beating in sync when our life trajectories became too vastly different. Love sometimes is like physics. It needs balance. When one object flies too fast and the other stands still, a centrifugal force emerges, pulling them apart, impossible to hold on to. In the end, I realized that sometimes letting go is the way for both to be free, no matter how painful. This confession isn't meant as a lament. It's to expose a brutal truth about my marriage. A love story that began like a fairy tale, but then gradually transformed into a tragedy of distance, even though we were still together, still called each other husband and wife. This is the story of me, Owen, and Elizabeth, the woman I loved more than my own life. About love, about dreams, about careers, and about the fragile line between support, sacrifice, and losing yourself. I once believed that love could overcome all barriers, all distances, but I didn't anticipate the destructive power of the centrifugal force of success, a force that can pull two people apart, even if their hearts are still there, still aching for each other. Listen to my story so you can reflect on your own relationships, to understand that sometimes too great a sacrifice that goes unrecognized, a disparity in each person's progress, can become unhealable cracks. Because not every love can withstand the centrifugal force of success, and sometimes letting go is the way for both to find happiness, even if it's not happiness together. This is a secret I paid a very high price to learn. I met Elizabeth on a drizzly late autumn afternoon when we were both naive college students, carrying big but undefined dreams, not yet knowing where we were headed. I was Owen, a software engineering student immersed in dry numbers, rigid logical algorithms, and a seemingly predetermined career path, a stable job, good income security. And she, my Elizabeth, was an art student, a completely different world full of colors, emotions, and a dreamy quality I'd never imagined. She often sat in a corner of a small coffee shop near campus, a place called The Canvas, true to its name, a quiet space filled with the smell of coffee and oil paint. The weak yellow light from hanging lanterns created a warm, ethereal atmosphere. Her hands were always stained with paint patches of blue, red, yellow, purple, shimmering like stars on rough canvas. Her eyes were dreamy, gazing out the window as if seeing an entirely different universe, a place of lines, colors, and emotions where she could freely float. The first time I saw her, she was intently painting a picture of raindrops falling on the cafe window, the drops reflecting the streetlights as sparkling dots of light. Her gentle smile when she finished her work, the way she admired it with proud eyes, made my heart skip a beat. I fell in love with her at first sight. Loved the way she saw the world with a pure artist's soul, loved the way she immersed herself in her own world, oblivious to the surrounding noise. She was completely different from any girl I'd ever met. Different from the math problems I was solving, different from the logical, practical world I inhabited. We started dating. Late nights at the library, I'd study code and she'd sketch. I took her to art galleries I'd never considered visiting before. She led me into the world of colors and shapes, explaining to me the emotions a painting could convey, the story behind each brushstroke. I listened to her speak passionately and felt a part of my own soul expand. Endless conversations about crazy ideas, about the future, about what we wanted to do, about our deepest desires. Elizabeth always spoke of her dream with burning passion, to become a professional painter, to create message-filled paintings, to exhibit her work in prestigious galleries, to inspire others with her art. She told me about great artists, about classic works, about how art could change the world. I, with the practical mindset of an engineer, initially found those dreams distant, even somewhat unrealistic in a society where artists were often associated with poverty. Many of my friends, even my family, advised Elizabeth to find a more stable job after graduation, to be a little more realistic. They looked at her with skeptical, even pitying eyes, as if she were pursuing something fanciful. But her sparkling eyes when she talked about art, that burning passion, completely convinced me. I didn't want to extinguish the flame within her. On the contrary, I wanted to be the wind to fan that flame, to be the launch pad for her talent. I thought the world needs people like Elizabeth, people who bring beauty and emotion. The fact that I could help her realize that grand dream for me was also a form of success, a purpose in life. On another rainy night, as we sat under the awning of an old building sheltering from the rain, Elizabeth leaned her head gently on my shoulder, her voice tiny but resolute, almost a plea. "Owen, I know my dream seems impossible. Everyone tells me I should give up, find a stable job, a practical job. But I can't. I feel like I was born to paint, to live with colors. If I can't paint, I can't live. I'll wither like a flower without sunlight." I squeezed her hand tightly, looked straight into her dreamy yet determined eyes, and uttered a promise I thought I would keep forever, a promise spoken from the bottom of my heart. Don't worry, Elizabeth. Nothing is impossible when I'm here. I will support you unconditionally, absolutely. I will be your solid foundation for you to fly. You just pursue your dream. All necessary conditions, all financial and material difficulties I will handle. I believe in you. Believe in your talent. Believe in the path you've chosen. I thought that was the beginning of a journey together. A vow to soar high together, to conquer every peak together. I thought I would be her wings, helping her overcome every storm, never letting her worry about material burdens. My promise of unconditional support, initially spoken with all my love and sincerity, with an intense belief in Elizabeth and in myself, was precisely the genesis of later tragedies. I hadn't anticipated that this unconditional support over time could become an invisible burden, an invisible chain binding me and ultimately stretching us too far apart beyond love's ability to hold on. I promised to be her launchpad, but I didn't consider where I would stand when she flew really high and whether I would still have a place in her life. I bet everything on Elizabeth's dream, forgetting that I also had dreams of my own, aspirations for personal growth that I had inadvertently set aside. After graduation, our paths clearly diverged, but we still thought these paths would run parallel forever, like two railway tracks that never separate. I quickly landed a good-paying job at a large tech company, exactly as I had planned and as my family expected. My job was stable, provided a steady income, and I quickly climbed the ladder in the world of numbers and algorithms. I worked hard, sometimes all night, staying up late and waking early, solving complex problems, ensuring I had enough financial stability to build a solid life for both of us and to nurture Elizabeth's dream. Meanwhile, Elizabeth remained steadfast on her challenging artistic path. She just painted incessantly with an inexhaustible passion. She spent hours, sometimes entire days, in her small studio where the smell of oil paint, turpentine, and canvas became familiar scents in our shared apartment. Scents I had learned to love and associate with creativity. She created emotional works, paintings I felt had a soul, a story capable of moving people. But selling paintings was incredibly difficult. Not everyone understood the value of true art, and those willing to pay for it were even rarer. Customers were scarce, and each painting sold only covered a small portion of material costs, let alone living expenses. She faced market indifference, outright rejections from galleries, and skeptical glances and practical advice from friends and family. I remember once Elizabeth's mother called, her voice full of worry, mixed with a hint of disappointment. "My dear, if you keep painting like this, when will you have enough money to buy a house, a car, and settle down? Why don't you just find an office job? It's easier with a steady salary and social insurance." Elizabeth cried a lot after that call. She felt pressured, misunderstood. I held her close, comforting her, whispering, "Don't worry, I'm here. Just keep painting. Money is my concern. I'll handle everything. You just need to focus on your dream." And I did just that. Every dollar I earned after basic living expenses was invested in Elizabeth's dream. I bought her the best paints from abroad, imported specialized brushes, high-quality non-warping canvases, a high-resolution printer so she could print limited editions, to sell a professional camera to photograph her work with the highest quality. I covered the costs of renting small exhibition spaces at art cafes or creative venues, printing catalogs, and even plane tickets so she could attend art events, seek opportunities, and learn from other artists she admired. I even sought out books and online courses on art for her to reference, even though I understood nothing about them, but I believed they would help her. I never complained. Honestly, I never felt it was a sacrifice. Whenever I saw Elizabeth absorbed in her studio, sometimes falling asleep at her drawing table with paint smudges on her cheek and hair whenever she completed a painting she was proud of and exhibited it, I felt a shared joy, a simple but profound happiness. I believed I was contributing to something grander, something more meaningful than the dry lines of code I wrote daily. I thought her happiness was my happiness, and my ability to realize her dream was my purpose in life. I was the one behind the scenes, the solid support for Elizabeth on the front lines. I was ready to do anything for her, for our love, and for her dream. I accepted becoming a money-making machine so she could be herself. Elizabeth was always grateful too. She often hugged me tightly after I transferred money for art supplies or bought her an art-related gift. Her eyes sparkled with appreciation, with absolute trust. She would say, "You're the only one who believes in me, Owen. When everyone told me to give up, when everyone scoffed at my dreams, you were the only one who stood by me. You are my whole world, my hero, my wings." She even often called me her wings because I helped her fly. Those words made me feel like a hero, the only one who saw the true value in Elizabeth, in her talent. I thought we would go the distance together forever. her supporter, the silent hero behind her success. I thought we were a perfect team, a smoothly running machine. One person building a solid foundation, handling the material aspects, the other soaring with dreams, bringing beauty to life. While I thought I was building a solid foundation for both of us, in reality, I was building a launchpad exclusively for Elizabeth. I put her dream above my own, above my personal growth, and even above our future direction as a couple. I poured all my energy, finances, and time into nurturing a tree that I couldn't grow with, couldn't rise with. I forgot that a sustainable relationship needs both people to move forward together, perhaps at different speeds but in the same direction, growing together, exploring new things together. I accepted becoming a provider, a logistics person, a supporter, rather than a true companion, a partner who could share and develop together. This sacrifice, though born of love, was the beginning of our estrangement and inevitable tragedy. Our lives continued like that. I worked, earned money, and Elizabeth painted. Everything seemed stable in an eerily peaceful way. A calm before the storm, until one day the big turning point arrived. A turning point that completely altered Elizabeth's life trajectory, and with it mine. The third painting in her The Unseen Symphony series, which Elizabeth had spent months, even sweat and tears, completing a vibrant and emotional piece about the chaotic yet harmonious sounds of modern urban life, unexpectedly went viral on Instagram. In just a few days, her account received hundreds of thousands of likes, thousands of shares and comments. People were raving about how Elizabeth used color to tell stories, how she transformed invisible sounds into tangible images. She was hailed as a new phenomenon in the art world, a rising star. Then what Elizabeth had dreamed of since sitting in that small coffee shop corner came true: a prestigious art gallery in the city center. A place she had only dared to dream of setting foot in invited her to exhibit her work. This was followed by a flurry of interview invitations on podcasts, art magazines, and even a national morning TV talk show. Elizabeth's name suddenly became a frequent mention in the art world, from picky critics to ordinary art lovers. Elizabeth was busier than ever. Her schedule was packed with meetings, interviews, launch events, and gatherings with collectors. Her phone rang constantly, emails poured in, messages were nonstop. I stayed by her side, still doing the familiar support tasks, driving her to events, preparing her outfits, sometimes answering calls for her when she was too busy, or arranging her schedule. I was still happy, still proud of my wife's success, still thinking this was the shared result of both of us, the culmination of my sacrifice and support. The first time I attended Elizabeth's solo exhibition, it was a formal evening. The warm lights illuminated the vibrant paintings, sparkling like stars on canvas. Guests packed the room, dressed elegantly, sipping wine and whispering compliments. They were millionaire art collectors, renowned critics, seasoned artists, influential figures in the industry. Elizabeth stood at the center, radiant in a pristine white dress gifted by a famous designer, her smile brighter than ever, like a goddess of art. She chatted animatedly with the famous gallery director, with prestigious art collectors, with the influencer friends whose names I only heard on social media or saw in magazines. They talked about art, about creative philosophy, about future projects, about concepts I had never learned in engineering school, things far removed from my world. It was an entirely different world, a glamorous, luxurious world where I felt out of place, like an uninvited guest or a stranger who wandered into an elite party, not understanding the rules of the game, not understanding the language. I could only stand in a corner, trying to smile, trying to blend in, but the feeling of alienation, of being lost, grew within me. I didn't understand the lofty art terms they were using. I couldn't participate in those conversations. When Elizabeth introduced me to someone, she would simply say, "This is Owen, my husband." And then their eyes would glance past me back to Elizabeth, to conversations about art, about trips, about new ideas. I felt like a decoration, a part dependent on Elizabeth, not a man with his own value, his own voice. I felt like an invisible man, a faint shadow behind the dazzling spotlight of my wife. There were moments amidst the gentle music and bustling chatter when I wondered, does she still see me the same way? Does she still see Owen, the man who promised to support her unconditionally, who walked with her through the toughest days, who believed in her when no one else did? Or am I just a part of the success story? She's building a nameless background character with no voice in the novel of her life. Elizabeth's eyes then, when they met mine, were just a fleeting glance, a busy social smile, and then she would turn back to her important conversations, to her new connections, to new opportunities. I realized she no longer looked at me with the admiration, the trusting gaze she once did, the look that once meant everything to her. That look now held only familiarity, sometimes a little absent-mindedness, a little hurry, as if I had become such an obvious part of her life that she no longer needed to pay attention. Elizabeth's success, though something I always wished for and supported with all my heart, was precisely what created an invisible distance, a deep crack between us. She had stepped into a world I couldn't belong to, a world where I had no language to communicate, no place to stand on equal footing. I was the one who brought her to the launch pad, but I couldn't fly with her. The disparity in worldviews, social connections, visions, and conversation topics began to widen, creating the first unhealable cracks in our relationship. I had become a part of her past, a beautiful memory, not a companion in the present and future. Elizabeth's success showed no signs of stopping. She began to receive invitations to international exhibitions, art collaborations with major global figures, artists whose names I only heard on TV channels. Her life was a constant stream of flights from New York to London, from Paris to Tokyo, from Milan to Sydney. Her schedule was packed with partner meetings, workshops, new projects, long interviews, and social parties that stretched through the night. She was rarely home, and when she was, she'd be tired, lost in thoughts about work, or rushing off to meet new people. I, with the promise of unconditional support etched in my mind, tried my best to keep up with her progress, to ensure I wasn't left too far behind. I didn't want to become outdated, a husband who couldn't understand his wife's world. When Elizabeth received an invitation to exhibit in Los Angeles, I immediately asked my company for permission to work remotely so I could go with her, supporting her in every way. I helped her arrange the exhibition space, handled technical issues related to digital artwork projection, and even stood selling paintings and chatting with customers on her behalf when she was busy with press conferences or important interviews. I became an unpaid manager, a devoted personal assistant, a shadow following her every move, someone always in the background, always ready to serve. When Elizabeth was invited to Paris for 2 weeks to participate in a special art project, I once again took unpaid leave. My work began to suffer significantly. My superiors were displeased with my frequent absences and declining work performance. Colleagues started whispering, their eyes looking at me with confusion and pity. "Owen, are you okay? It seems like you're too focused on your wife's work." My boss directly told me during a performance review, and I could only force a smile. I knew he was right, but I couldn't stop. I just wanted to be by Elizabeth's side, wanted her to know that I was always there. Still her solid foundation, her indispensable companion. I tried to learn about art, read books about art movements, tried to understand the terminology Elizabeth and her new friends often used. I even signed up for an online art history course, all just to be able to talk to Elizabeth, to bridge the gap between our two worlds so she wouldn't feel I was an outsider. But no matter how hard I tried, no matter how much more I did to keep up to compensate for the ever-widening gap, the truth remained harsh. The gap didn't narrow at all. On the contrary, it grew wider, deeper, like a bottomless chasm. Elizabeth was always busy, and her stories gradually became alien to me. She talked about meetings with millionaire collectors, about galas at major museums, about abstract art ideas I couldn't grasp, about projects I couldn't participate in. I sat listening to her stories, trying to appear interested, trying to decipher the art concepts she mentioned, but inside I felt empty. A cold emptiness, a loneliness even when she was right beside me. I was no longer Owen, the independent, strong man. I had become Elizabeth's husband, a secondary name, a role without its own opinions, without its own voice. The more Elizabeth shone, the higher she soared, radiant and magnificent, like a star in the night sky, attracting every gaze. And I shrank smaller, like a fading dim light, a shadow obscured by her dazzling brilliance. I used to be a man with a voice, with dreams, with my own life. Now I felt like I was just a satellite orbiting Elizabeth, a part dependent on her trajectory, something indispensable but unable to stand as an equal, unable to share the deepest emotions with her. I had accepted sacrificing too much, to the point of losing myself, losing my own identity and value, losing even the joy and interest in my own work. I began to feel tired, listless every time I went to work, and even when I was home. I thought love was enough to fill every void. But it turned out success and career can create unfillable chasms in a relationship, especially when only one person takes flight and the other just watches. My sacrifice wasn't a sharing. It was a trade-off, trading myself, trading my dreams for Elizabeth's spotlight. I was no longer a companion but a servant, an indispensable supporter, but also unable to stand as an equal, unable to share the deepest emotions with her. The most painful thing was, I realized this wasn't what I had predicted. I had deluded myself into thinking I was okay, that I was happy in this role. But the truth was, I was slowly drowning in self-doubt, silent sadness, and an extreme sense of being lost. I had become a stranger in my own life, a man who no longer recognized himself in the mirror. The distance grew relentlessly, exponentially, uncontrollably. We still lived under one roof, still called each other husband and wife. still occasionally had dinner together when Elizabeth had time at home, but we were no longer truly living together, no longer a real couple. We were like two parallel lines, each on its own trajectory in its own world. Elizabeth was busy with international projects, endless long flights, meetings with people I didn't know, stories I couldn't participate in, couldn't understand. She talked about exhibitions in Berlin, workshops in Tokyo, million-dollar contracts. As for me, I returned to my engineering work, to lines of code and projects I had to solve alone, to pressures from my boss and colleagues. We no longer shared daily stories, no more late-night heart-to-hearts, no more carefree, easy laughter like before. She had her world, vast, colorful, brilliantly lit by the stage lights, while my world narrowed more and more, grew grayer, confined to the four walls of my office and a computer screen. No one cheated. No one made obvious mistakes. There were no big arguments, no dramatic breakdowns. Everything happened in a terrifying silence, a silence of accepting fate, of resignation. We divorced in silence because there was nothing left to say, nothing left to save. The tiny cracks had grown into deep chasms that we could no longer cross. We were just two strangers living under the same roof with beautiful memories of the past. I tried to talk to Elizabeth privately many times, trying to make her understand that a marriage needs independence, needs boundaries, needs sharing. I reached out to friends, those with marital experience, for advice. I even thought about seeking a marriage therapist, but then gave up, thinking Elizabeth would never agree, and she was too busy to devote time to such conversations. Every time I tried to talk seriously, Elizabeth would avoid it, saying, "Don't overthink it, Owen. Everything's fine. I'm really busy right now, maybe some other time." She wasn't malicious. She was just too engrossed in her own world. I had many sleepless nights, tossing and turning in the dark, staring at the ceiling and wondering, what am I doing with my life? Am I happy? Is she happy? I remember distinctly the night I decided to say goodbye. It was a full moon night, the silver moonlight shining through the living room window, casting light on Elizabeth's tired but contented face as she returned from a 2-week trip to Europe. She sat opposite me on the familiar sofa where we had shared so many memories, so much laughter and tears. The air was thick with silence, only the gentle rustle of curtains. "Don't you see it, Elizabeth?" I began, my voice hoarse as if it had been suppressed for too long, holding back so much sadness, so much restraint. "It seems we're living two different lives, only temporarily intersecting in this house. You've flown too high, you've gained wings and reached new heights, while I'm still watching, unable to keep up. I feel like I'm no longer a proper husband to you. I'm just a supporter, a companion, but I've been left behind, lost in your world." Elizabeth was silent. Her eyes met mine, not with surprise, but with understanding and a profound sadness, a painful acceptance. She cried. Silent tears rolled down her cheeks, soaking wet but without a single sob. She didn't stop them. She didn't object, didn't hold on, didn't ask, "Why did we come to this?" She just cried in silence, a silence full of pain and regret. "I know, Owen," Elizabeth said, her voice trembling, choked with emotion but still very clear. "I feel it too. I feel like I'm no longer walking in step with you. I flew high, I found success, but I feel lonelier. You were the one who gave me wings, who was my launch pad, but now those wings are pulling us apart. There's no way to go back." We sat there in silence, her tears and my pain mingling, forming a sad symphony of separation. No more words were needed. We both understood it was time to let go. A separation without hatred, without bitter words, without contention, only the painful acceptance that our love, though still present, wasn't strong enough to keep two people on the same trajectory in the same world. We chose to divorce in silence, to preserve the best of our past, to prevent our love from becoming a bitter struggle, but rather a liberation for both. The ultimate realization I had was that it wasn't betrayal or heated arguments, but rather the disparity in personal and career growth, coupled with a deep lack of communication, that became the true reason for our breakdown. I had focused too much on supporting Elizabeth and forgot about myself. Forgot that a relationship needs harmony, not just sacrifice. And Elizabeth, she had become too engrossed in her success to realize she was unintentionally neglecting the man who gave her wings, that she had unintentionally forgotten the person who was behind her. She also endured the loneliness of being at the top, a loneliness I couldn't understand. Just as she couldn't understand my loneliness on the ground, the greatest pain was realizing that despite still loving each other, two people no longer belonged to the same world, no longer spoke the same language, no longer able to continue together on the path of marriage. After the divorce, my life completely changed. I took time to heal, to find myself again. I returned to my engineering job, focusing on new projects, seeking opportunities for personal growth. I started dedicating time to hobbies I had long set aside, reading, exercising, meeting old friends. Gradually, I felt myself regaining balance, regaining my voice and self-worth. I was no longer Elizabeth's shadow, but I was Owen again, an independent man with my own dreams and goals. I still follow news about Elizabeth, still see her flying high, flying farther. I'm still proud of her, but now that pride no longer comes with pain or a feeling of being lost. It's a pure pride, a blessing from afar. If you're listening to my story and you feel like you're with someone who's slowly flying higher or moving faster than you in life in their career, or simply in their personal development, someone whose world is expanding while yours is shrinking, please don't just exist for them. Please don't blindly focus on supporting and sacrificing for them, forgetting to look back at yourself, forgetting your own dreams, your own desires. Don't let yourself become a faded shadow behind someone else's spotlight, a nameless background character in the story of your own life. Remember, you also have dreams, goals, and a life of your own that needs nurturing, that needs to grow. You also deserve to be happy and to be yourself. True love doesn't demand sacrifice that goes unrecognized for too long, isn't reciprocated, or doesn't involve shared companionship. A healthy relationship needs both people to move forward, to grow together, to share burdens and joys. Even if their speeds differ, they must be headed in the same direction, towards the same spiritual destination. Companionship isn't blindly following. It's not sacrificing everything so the other person can fly high. It's whispering to each other. It's burning together. It's finding joy together in every step. Even if the pace is different, but moving in the same direction with the same belief in the future. Companionship is building together, growing together, overcoming difficulties together, and enjoying the fruits of your labor together. It's about balance, about mutual respect. I love Elizabeth. Both when she sat in that small corner cafe, her hands stained with paint, sketching her first pieces with simple dreams, and also when she became the radiant masterpiece, standing in a prestigious gallery, admired by the whole world with monumental success. That love never died within me. It just transformed, becoming a beautiful sadness, a memory of a journey we once shared. I still wish her happiness, but the most painful realization, the one that forced me to let go, was this: I understood that not every love can withstand the centrifugal force of success. Not every couple can maintain their bond when one person flies too high and the other remains perpetually watching. When the distance is too great, when two worlds are too different, when a common language no longer exists, then letting go, no matter how painful, is the way for both to find true happiness, to find their own paths, and to rediscover themselves, a more complete, freer version. Be brave enough to face the truth no matter how harsh it may be. Because your happiness, your worth, should not depend on someone else's success or trajectory. Thank you for listening to my story. If this story touched your heart, or if you have any thoughts or feelings you'd like to share, don't hesitate to leave a comment below. Please hit the like button, share this story with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on other profound stories. Stories about life, love, and the lessons we've paid a price to learn. Your support is what motivates me to keep sharing these pieces of my life. I'll see you in the next videos. Goodbye for now.